Good morning. Welcome again to another Thursday blog. I think I'm going to call this one, Let the Redeemed of the Lord Live Like It. The book is over 25 years old, but it's still relevant for us. It's called Resident Aliens, and it was written by Stanley Hauerwas and William Willimon. The book is considered a provocative Christian assessment of culture and ministry for people who know that something is wrong. The book Resident Aliens discusses the nature of the church. And in this regard, it's the church as the body of Christ and not the building. But the discussion focuses around its relationship to the surrounding culture. It argues that the church or churches should focus on developing Christian life and community rather than attempting to reform secular culture. Hauerwas and Willimon reject the idea that America is a Christian nation. Instead, Christians should see themselves as resident aliens, they say, in a foreign land. The authors maintain that instead of transforming government, the role of Christians is to live lives that model the love of Jesus Christ. And rather than trying to convince others to change their ethics, Christians should model a new set of ethics that are grounded in life, death, and resurrection of Christ. I've been musing about this concept to myself for some time, and I kind of invite you here to join me in that thinking and discussion and what it means for us as citizens of Christ's kingdom in the culture where we find ourselves. Paul, in his letter to the Ephesians, writes, "For you were once darkness, but now you are light in the Lord. Live as children of light." And that particular passage is in Ephesians chapter 5. But note that Paul doesn't say that they once lived in darkness. He says instead that they were once darkness. The emphasis here is not external, but internal. Darkness inside. It's penetrated to the very core of their being. But Christ has reversed that. When he calls us to himself, he pronounces that now we are light. And again, it's not external. It's internal. And remember this, darkness can never dispel light. It always works the other way around. As light always dispels darkness, light always wins. In both the Old Testament and the New Testament, this whole concept of light and darkness is used as metaphors for that which is right and that which is wrong, or good and evil. But note Paul's admonition. You are now light in the Lord, so live like it. Now, that's my paraphrase, I confess. As Hauerwas and Willimon state later in their book, the only way for the world to know that it is being redeemed is for the church to point to the Redeemer by being a redeemed people themselves. The way for the world to know that it needs redeeming is for the church to live a life of light as an alternative to what the world offers. The book Resident Aliens affirms once more that Christianity is an invitation to be a part of an alien people that make a difference because they see something that cannot otherwise be seen without Christ. Right living is more important, is really the challenge, bigger than right thinking. The church needs to assert again that God, not nations, rules the world, and that the boundaries of God's kingdom transcend those of Caesar, and that the main political task of the church is the formation of a people who see the cost of discipleship and are willing to pay that price. It was Mark Allen Powell who wrote in a recent online article, "The image of the church as the body of Christ, however, implies something more than imitation." He says the church does not simply ask, what would Jesus do? And then seek to follow that example. Rather, the church becomes the physical medium through which the risen Lord continues to do what the earthly Jesus did. The risen Lord, Christ, acts and speaks through the church. So where do we start? How do we start? Perhaps we begin with the assertion, let the redeemed of the Lord tell their story, as Psalm 107 speaks of. And their story, or that story, is a story of God's faithfulness to call us out of our darkness. But we need to follow up with Paul's words right away. You are now light in the Lord, so live like it. We know that when Jesus established the church, he didn't have in mind an institution. He had in mind a revolution. His bride was not to be a building, but to be a shining light in the darkness, a people who were holy and set apart. So what does it mean to be a redeemed people of God? Based on Hauerwas and Wellerman, it means being a church that is clearly visible to the world, in which people are faithful to their promises, faithful to love their enemies, faithful to tell the truth, faithful to honor the poor, faithful to suffer for righteousness, and thereby testify to the amazing community-creating power of God. It is a church with no interest in withdrawing from the world, but not surprised at all when its witness evokes hostility from the world. I don't know. What do you think? I would love to hear your thoughts on this. Living like the redeemed of the Lord. Amen.